Okay, recorded the cloud with Michael McLeod. So, hello everybody. My name is Yair, and we're really happy to see so many people join us today for the webinar with Michael McLeod. And thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna introduce Alex in a minute, who will introduce you and start the conversation. But just to say a few words for everybody, but also for you, Michael. The way that I see it is that I have two young kids, 7 and 5, but I think that for about a decade or even longer, people started realizing that there's something off with giving smartphones and a ton of screen time to the children, more advanced video games, sharing. There were issues that were raised of cyberbullying and security and pedophiles and just distractions for the children, addiction, and many other issues. But I think that what has happened, the way that I'm seeing this, is that gradually these these organizations, some of them local, some of them national, became kind of bigger and bigger. And then there was a big catalyzer, which was the book a couple of years ago of the Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, and that kind of exploded everything. The circles got bigger, touching each other, organization merged, and now we're really seeing a ton of work that is basically looking at cell phones, smartphones, screens in children, the advanced new video games, how we're always grabbing their attention with the social media, the danger of all of this. And so that's kind of what has led to multiple organizations, some of them sponsoring this event. And I think that one more thing that I will say before introducing Alex is that, and I say this a lot, but this is super relevant, is that we are not some sort of an anti-technology cult. In fact, I just came back late last night. The flight was almost canceled because of the weather. From California. I was participating in a huge conference of I'm a cardiologist by training, so cardiology and AI. And I lead my division in multiple initiatives related to generative AI and imaging and different solutions for healthcare to make it better for every provider and mostly for every patient. So I'm a believer in the technology, but I'm also very much aware of the risks of it, including the kids. And one of the things that I noticed, Alex, is that when we were in that, so it's like many tables, and dozens of people, over 100 people who participated, and like the greatest cardiologists and AI experts. And what I saw is that everybody's sitting, I don't even know where my cell phone is right now. Oh, here it is. But everybody was sitting, and on the table, there were the cell phone. And I was looking around, and the lectures were amazing. But I could see that every few seconds, like people were, including myself, I was probably the worst. We're like, maybe I should check, maybe a cell phone, maybe a trigger, maybe something, maybe a notification, maybe, like it was nonstop. You could see nobody was sitting just relaxed and forgetting about their cell phone. And I'm thinking about this, that if this is happening to adults that are so needy of their cell phones, especially when they're in the area, what chance do the children have to cope with the smartphones and all these technology companies that are just want to grab your attention and your time? So that was kind of like a wake-up call for me. But anyway, this is don't worry, Alex, I saw your message. You're going to get access in a second. So I'm really proud to present Alex Baker, who lives in Rose Valley, nearby in a suburb outside of Philadelphia. And we are close of neighbors, similar districts, and we do some collaboration together, including in person. She's a researcher. She's a former elementary school teacher. She's a mother of 2. But she's also the founder of the Delco Unplugged, which is a local collective action initiative aimed at delaying smartphones and social media for children, and more broadly, shifting the culture around screens at home, in schools, and generally in the community. Alex is also one of the leaders of PA Unplugged, an amazing organization that started here, 5 incredible leaders, mothers, a statewide coalition of parent groups working towards cultural change of how we approach screens and social media in childhood and adolescence. So I'm going to turn it to Alex because I want her to speak maybe a few words before she introduces Michael about the news from Pennsylvania, just from literally from the last 72 hours.
Great. Thank you so much, Yair. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Alex Becker. As Yair mentioned, I help lead our statewide coalition, Pennsylvania Unplugged, which is a coalition of more than 20 parent groups across the Commonwealth. 8 counties, over 3,000 parents. We continue to grow and hear from parents in different counties every day about wanting to start something. So if that sounds like you, please reach out to us. We are primarily engaging in advocacy around these topics of children and screens and concerns about what's happening, not just to children, but to us as adults. And these conversations are continuing and evolving every day. We are fortunate to have the mentorship of several national nonprofits in this space, including the wonderful Distraction Free Schools Policy Project, Smartphone Free Childhood US, and Mothers Against Media Addiction. Before we get going with our conversation tonight, I wanted to mention an exciting update. After several months of work, over 20 legislator meetings, and probably thousands of emails and calls and meetings, Pennsylvania is one step closer to phone-free schools. Senate Bill 1014, a bipartisan bill with more than 15 co-sponsors, was introduced on Friday of last week. And we need your help to get it across the finish line. So if you live in Pennsylvania, please contact your senator and ask them to support this bill. And please sign our petition. We have a step-by-step guide on our website, which we will put in the chat. So thank you so much for indulging me there. I'm thrilled to have Michael join us tonight. We're diving into a topic that every parent is thinking about: how screens and social media are shaping our kids' attention, motivation, and most importantly, mental health. It's truly my honor to welcome Mike, a nationally recognized ADHD and executive functioning specialist, founder of Grow Now ADHD, and host of the hugely popular ADHD parenting podcast. Mike works with children and families and also trains educators nationwide on how to build executive functioning and self-regulation skills in children. Even if your child is neurotypical, his work offers extremely valuable takeaways for every parent. I know I personally have learned so much. Mike was really kind enough to come speak in an event we had in Delaware County last month. I am so happy that everyone is here to be able to learn from him tonight. And we're just really fortunate to have you speaking out on these topics in general. So let's jump in with the first question. A lot of talking from us, and we're excited to hear from you. Mike, we'd love to start with your story. What first drew you to working in this field, working with kids with ADHD and executive functioning challenges, and how has that work evolved over time?
Sure, of course. Yeah. So it's quite a long journey. I've been working directly with youth since I was a youth myself back in 2005. So that's when it first started, when I was working with youth in various capacities. I ended up going back to school and getting a second bachelor's in speech and language pathology. Then I got my master's, and so I became a licensed and certified speech and language pathologist. And during my time as an SLP, as speech pathologist, I was lucky enough, my supervisor was this world-renowned apraxia specialist, which is a motor speech-based disorder that speech and language pathologists can specialize in. So she was phenomenal, an incredible supervisor, great mentor, and she got me involved with this group called the Focus Foundation down in Annapolis, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. All these incredible doctors and neuropsychs and great physical therapists and just an incredible group of specialists from Annapolis and Children's Hospital in D.C. And they specialize in these chromosomal disorders in boys and girls. So it's boys with extra X chromosomes, these mosaic chromosomes, and like Klinefelter syndrome, those sorts of things. And pretty much all of those boys had apraxia, and my supervisor specialized in apraxia. And I came to find that all of the boys also had ADHD. And I learned very, very quickly there's really nothing out there in terms of treatment. Oh, you're diagnosed with ADHD, now what? It's so much of a sink or swim mentality where they're being sent to these talk therapies, counseling, CBT, DBT, and it's not moving the needle. It's not improving quality of life. So that was the initial starting point for me. And I am someone with ADHD myself. And so that was what naturally drew me to those kids and being so motivated to figure out what is the best support. So I worked very, very closely with the doctors and neuropsychs from the Focus Foundation, and I eventually developed the Grow Now model of internal skills, which I'm sure we can talk about. It's really a transition from the external hyperactivity, external inattentiveness, external time management, external organization, and more of an internal self-regulation, self-motivation focus, a lot of the work of Dr. Russell Barkley. So what we did was I developed this entire model. We did a year-long research study on the Grow Now internal skills model at the Stratford Friends School over in Newtown Square, a fantastic school over there. We worked with an entire grade level, implemented the model, got the data, saw some great research and some great benefits of the model, and everything's really expanded from there.
Awesome. Thank you. I actually did not realize that you had ADHD yourself. So it's
Oh, well.
like, no, it's really interesting
Yeah.
to hear you talk about it from that perspective.
Hmm.
the- so you've worked with so many kids and families over the years. When
Many.
did you start noticing that screens were changing the landscape? What made you realize this?
Oof. This was long before COVID. This was not that long after I was really practicing as a speech pathologist, where I was doing mostly speech and language pathology work, and I slowly transitioned into just executive functioning work as the success of the model showed. So I would really say right around, 2016, 2017 is really when I started to notice, obviously I was working with ADHD kids. I was implementing the model in schools and in one-on-one sessions and parent training. And I was just noticing time and time again, it was just synonymous. You can't discuss ADHD and executive functioning challenges without significantly also discussing significant and debilitating screen addictions. They go absolute hand in hand. We know that the ADHD brain is prime for substance abuse problems later in life. And we do a pretty good job in this country keeping those scary things away from kids like drugs and alcohol and cigarettes and things like that. But now we have this absolute perfect, like to a T, perfect marketing of big tech, of these devices, of here are these devices. They're going to make your kids safe, smart, and social. And basically just, teaching parents what better way to market a product for your kids than say, if your kid gets this, they're going to have a lot of friends and you're going to keep them really safe. And that's really, what I've noticed is as soon as, 2016, 2017 came around, the more ADHD students I was working with, it wasn't just strengthening those internal skills, it was also the environmental factors. And really, 100 times out of 100, that first initial obstacle to get over towards progress was decreasing and in some cases eliminating their screen use. Then you can work on the skill building.
Mm. Tell us a little bit more about what you've noticed. Like, what are the ways in which like screens are this like big factor in kids' attention, their motivation, their executive functioning? Can you talk a little bit about like, yes, I'm hearing what you're saying, like getting past the screen addiction is this huge hurdle. What is it specifically that's going on, that's affecting kids and kind of like hindering them to move past this big stumbling block?
So just like I said, the ADHD brain is synonymous with screen addiction. So first we have to understand the ADHD brain. The ADHD brain is a true neurodiverse brain. It is different from individuals of the same age and same gender of the neurotypical population. It is different in structure, function, and development, produces much less dopamine. And ADHD is not an attention disorder. It is an executive functioning developmental disorder. If you have ADHD, your primary need is executive functioning. And we all have to 100% understand, comprehend, and accept that executive functioning is not time management and organization. It's not messy backpacks and messy folders. Executive functions are the greatest predictors of success for human beings, period. You need executive functions to live an independent life, move out of your parents' house, get a job, keep a job, make friends, keep friends. We need executive functions to live a successful, independent life. And what are executive functions? The ability to self-regulate and self-motivate towards non-preferred and non-instantly gratifying tasks. The ability to do the things that are boring. The ability to put in the work now, even though the fruits of that labor, the consequences of that labor, are much later down the road. So really what we're seeing with these screens is they are hardwiring the brain towards instant gratification, which is exactly what ADHD is. The ADHD brain is time blind, stuck in the now. What is the most tantalizing thing in the moment right now that will give me the dopamine and that will really make me feel good? The best way to describe the ADHD brain is that it is the path of least resistance brain. If the path of least resistance is available to them, they're going to choose that 100 times out of 100. So every single day I talk to parents when they call me to learn about Grow Now services, and so many of them will call me and say, my son shows no interest in friends, no interest in homework, no interest in chores, no interest in going outside. So, of course, my follow up is, okay, so what is he doing every day? Oh, he's always on his phone. He's on his Xbox. Well, there you go. There you have it. If those things are in the house, they're going to do those things over everything else. These things are real drugs. These things are consuming their mind and giving them all of the dopamine. The ADHD brain is in constant dopamine seeking. And the ADHD brain looks for dopamine in two very specific ways. Number one, screens. Number two, conflict. If conflict is available to them, they're going to take it. If the choice is homework on the laptop for 10 minutes or 3-hour fight with mom, they're going to choose 3-hour fight with mom over 5 minutes of homework. And if screens are there, they're going to pick screens over literally every other task. If it's an option, they're going to choose it because they can't regulate it. The ADHD brain is missing the stop and think and aim your behavior towards the future aspect of it. The ability to delay gratification, be a future thinker, see the future and work towards that future and feel that future. That's what makes human beings really executive-based animals. The ability to work towards that future, visualize that future, and feel that future. The ADHD brain misses that. They're missing a hindsight and a foresight. So what do? What's the most tantalizing thing right now? It is screens. And if screens are there for them, they're going to choose it. So this is why parent training, if for one of the many reasons, parent training is the number one clinical recommendation for ADHD and executive functions. Parents need to be trained in the appropriate techniques, and screens have to be looked at first. If there are too many screens in the house, if screens are too often available to the child, there's most likely going to be a problem.
Well, Michael, this is a fascinating and an excellent explanation. I do have a question, but before that question, follow-up question. I just wanted to remind everybody that this, I think we forgot to mention at the beginning, these sessions last an hour with a max of an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm sure that with all the questions that we're going to get, we're absolutely going to reach an hour and 15 minutes. So we will have a hard stop at, 9:45 p.m. So in about an hour from now. Also, a reminder for everybody, if you look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we can't see you, but there's an option of Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, comments, etc., just click throughout the session on the Q&A, and we'll try to get to all of the questions to Michael. So that's close paren, that's the comment that I had. Now, Michael, what you're describing to us about the ADHD brain, and you're talking about the stop and aim behavior, and the fact that the screens are just basically it's the path of least resistance. I was listening to you, and you know who I was thinking of? I was thinking about myself, because where previously, years ago, I would sit down, read the paper from A to Z. Now it's hard for me, because if I'm reading something on my cell phone and there's a news, I start reading it and it's like, okay, after 4 rows, I get bored and let's look for a hyperlink, and it's, to the next one. Or the same thing with the Facebook. Everybody's talking about, too long to read, TLT. You just have to get to the bottom, next. Meaning that,
and you're a cardiologist. Imagine a second grader.
Yeah. And I guess my question, maybe I shouldn't be admitting all of this, but it's true. I mean, everybody's attention span is like down. So my question to you is this, finally to the question. I had enough attention to get to the question, is that what you're describing is not only relevant to ADHD. It sounds to me like it's relevant to adults and certainly all children as well. So is this how you basically got so interested in the screens, because you realized that it's not only an ADHD issue with executive function of people with neurodiverse brain, or is it rather you concluded that everybody is suffering from this?
Well, yeah, we're currently in the biggest and the largest and the most serious youth mental health crisis in history. Let's be honest. All the very scary things about youth in terms of self-harm, suicide, diagnoses rates, medication rates, inpatient, All of these things are absolutely skyrocketing and have been and are not slowing down. And America is really at the forefront of those things. So yes, we are at the forefront of the worst youth mental health crisis in history. And you can basically tie the beginning of that youth mental health crisis all the way back to that Steve Jobs press conference of him announcing, we're calling it the iPhone. That was, you can pretty much pinpoint it on a graph to that, and you see all the spikes. And Jonathan Haidt talks about it in his book. You see spikes in suicides, spikes in all these self-harm. When Facebook introduced the like button, when Instagram came out, when Snapchat came out, all of these spikes in teenage depression and teenage self-harm. So yes, it is. But at its core, I have devoted my life towards helping ADHD kids. And ADHD kids are the biggest victim of all of this mess that all of us adults are creating for them. It is the ADHD youth that I've devoted my life to help their quality of life and to improve their outcomes, give them a better childhood than I did and give them better outcomes than everyone else can have. There has never been a harder time to be a parent. There's never been a harder time to be a teacher, and there's never been a harder time to be a kid with ADHD, because you are stuck in a world where capitalism is basically pushing these addictive devices and these ADHD, and for all the parents that have done the right thing and gotten rid of the screens, now they're getting laptops and iPads at school. And it is the ADHD kids that are the biggest victim of all of this mess, because they're the ones that can't regulate it. And parents want to get them Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, Brawl Stars, Snapchat, because these kids struggle socially. Their social executive functioning is a huge aspect of ADHD. So let me get them these things that I'm being told is social, but all the science tells us it's the opposite of social. There's nothing social about Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, even if you have a headset on and you're FaceTiming at the same time. There's nothing social about it, but it's disguised as social. Right? So you see your child who struggles with self-regulation skills, struggles with making friends, keeping friends, struggles with their attention, has a developmental delay of 3 to 5 years. You want to make that kid happy. You want to give that kid a happy childhood. So what are you going to do? Get them the best products. So parents, with all of their best intentions, give their kids these things that the kids really, really nag them about every single day. All the parents here today who have ADHD kids know how relentless ADHD kids are of asking for things. So with all the best intentions, they buy them these things, and then everything goes into the gutter. Everything just goes downhill from there. I got you that phone to make you safe, smart, and social. And now that you've had the phone, you're depressed, more dependent, and you're dormant. And you go to school, you come home, you stay home every single day. So yes, you are correct. We are in the biggest youth mental health crisis because of screens, and we've stolen the two most important things from childhood. By far, the two most important things of childhood, more important than grades, more important than homework, more important than school. And those two things are play and boredom. Unstructured, outdoor, unsupervised play that we all did as kids. We would ride our bikes, find our way home, and magically get home at dinner time without a GPS. Unstructured, unsupervised outdoor play, and boredom. When the second we stole those two things out of childhood, the youth mental health crisis started. And it is ADHD kids who are the biggest victims of all of our adult mistakes.
So this is something I really wanted to bring up, boredom. So I'm really glad that we're there. Something that we hear a lot is, parents saying, like, my kids don't deal with boredom well, and I'm not sure how to help them persevere through that. Like, how do I model it for them? Or how do I model, being resilient enough to kind of get through these bored moments and, find something to do. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you kind of coach parents in your practice, if this is something that comes up. If you could just talk a little bit about boredom and what you suggest when parents bring this up to you.
Yeah. So first of all, why is boredom so important? It sounds so elementary and not a big deal. Boredom is like going to the gym for your brain, period. When you are bored, you learn to independently self-regulate and self-motivate using your imagination. And guess what a fancy term for your imagination is? Executive functioning. All executive functioning is your ability to make mental movies of the past, the present, the future, and imagine things and work towards those mental movies and work towards those images. So when you're bored, you learn to be comfortable in your own skin, be comfortable in your body, visualize, self-soothe, self-regulate, get creative, try new things, be brave, step out of your comfort zone. So being bored is quite possibly being able to regulate through boredom, having the resilience to persevere through boredom is one of the most crucial life skills. So we cannot underestimate that. And number one, yes, parents are reporting my kid can't tolerate through boredom. And I'm telling you right now, that is a very serious problem. Do not underestimate that. That is more important than your child's ability to finish their homework and submit it on time. That's more important than their grades. If they can't tolerate boredom, all of that is nonsense. They have to be able to tolerate boredom. That is the biggest red flag you currently have for your child. So number one, the number one thing we teach parents in the Grow Now parent training program is you control your environment, not the child. So the first thing you have to do is take a look at the house. Do they have screens available to them? So you most often hear this from parents that are limiting their screen use. So they'll say, oh, I only give him, 3 hours after homework, or 4 hours on the weekend, or 2 hours every other day, that sort of thing. So that sort of thing, if they're coming to you saying I'm bored when screens are not available to them, you then need to start to give a long, hard look at how many hours they are available to them. Because if they're unable to be bored and self-regulate when screens aren't an option for them, remember the term, how we always say all behavior is communication. And we only like to use that term when it's warm and fuzzy. Like, oh, the kid's having a hard time. He just needs connection seeking. He just needs a hug. He just needs you to get on his level. So when it's warm, fuzzy parenting advice, we believe that communication is behavior is communication. We believe that. But how about your child being unable to be bored and self-regulate when screens aren't an option for them? That behavior is communication that my brain is not ready for the little bit of screens I have in my life. So step one is going to be to significantly decrease or eliminate the screen use in the house. And number two, it has to be unstructured outdoor play. All behaviors, especially ADHD behaviors, need an audience. And if that audience happens to be the unconditional relationship of mom and dad, creating conflict with those relationships is going to be more stimulating than going outside and playing. So the biggest thing we have to do is figure out, find families in the neighborhood, make connections at school, get on your school district Facebook group, utilize adult social media in positive ways by networking, creating play events, and find ways to drop your kids off at the playground, drop them off at somebody's house, invite kids over to your house, set up these play events, and replace that conflict-seeking dopamine with peer play dopamine.
Wow, this is powerful.
Nice.
I have a couple of comments, and then what we're going to start doing is gradually we're going to start merging questions from the attendees into the conversation with Michael. So the first comment: you're an awesome speaker. Really, it's like you really caught my attention every time that you speak about a different topic. So thank you for that. The second question, the comment that I have is actually about a month ago or so. Alex, was it a month ago, Alex? Alex and I hosted kind of like a panel conversation, and the keynote speech at the beginning, it was an in-person event, was by a psychiatrist and a researcher, and the whole speech was, the power of boredom. And what I took out of it is exactly what you're saying. That boredom, for some reason, it has a negative connotation, but it's like the engine for the brain, for creativity. And I see it with my kids. It's so important. The best time is when they just basically chill and they find things to play and imagination and fly this and fly that. So I think you're absolutely right. And I feel it myself with my kids. The question that I have is this, because you're talking about, okay, the problem with that is if kids with ADHD or with not, if they have the screen option at home, they'll always go to the screen and they'll lose this invaluable opportunity for this boredom development of the brain. But what do you say about because you mentioned briefly, and it didn't sound like it's a very positive context, the option of screens at schools, meaning tablets, and the Chromebooks. Because, we were debating if to opt out our kid, like the older kid is 7 years old, and I just had a conversation. And the way she said, listen, you guys do whatever you want. But from my perspective, Chromebook is actually not that bad because we do some math skills. It's very individual. It's stimulating. It's just a method of doing this. And another program just briefly to practice certain reading. But it sounds like it's not just like a, mindless playing whatever Roblox game or something. It's like there's design in it. And to me, it didn't sound so bad. So what do you think about that? Especially if the family later on allow the kids, ADHD or not, at home, boredom and outside play. What's so wrong about screens, Chromebooks, and tablets? And the question of Rachel to add to this is like, how do teachers use this information that you provided about ADHD and screens to plan the screen use in the classrooms?
So overall nationwide, EdTech has been an overwhelming disaster. It is quite possibly the worst thing to ever happen to American education in history. And that is saying something because America does not have a very positive history on education because we've always been pretty down the line compared to other countries like Finland and others. So EdTech overall has been an absolute mess. And you can look at all the class action lawsuits that are going on right now with PowerSchool, Google Classroom, Schoology, all of these things that stole kids' data and gave these kids open access to the internet and did all these horrible things. So basically, this is all part of, making money from kids, bringing money into schools. The real problem with it is what it's replacing. That's the real problem. So paper to pen, books, the old school ways of learning and having that in there, because what schools are doing now is giving kids devices, whether it's a tablet or a computer, with unfettered access to the internet. Sometimes they'll block certain sites, but let's be honest, technology has always been that phenomenon where the younger generations are way better than the older generations. They can hack that firewall 1,000 times faster than all three of us could. All three of us could. One 13-year-old can hack a school Chromebook faster than a cardiologist and two other smart people. Okay? That can happen real fast, right? Because they know exactly what they're doing. They can hack it real fast. I have had the pleasure over the past 2 years of observing over 500 classrooms. Every single time, every single class, whether it's a prestigious private school, religious school, charter school, special needs school, there are kids in class playing Minecraft, on ChatGPT, bullying each other on Google Docs, shopping, looking at things online every single time. Basically, what we're doing is we're asking kids, we're basically putting a slot machine on their desk and telling them to listen to a lecture and not pull the slot and just stare at the machine. It is impossible. And then schools will tell parents, oh, your child has to learn to resist. They have to learn to listen. They have to gain the skills. You're giving them a computer with access to the internet, and you're asking them to listen to a lecture on the Civil War? Like, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to do it. And all of this nonsense of, oh, we can't block YouTube. Teachers need the YouTube. It has been an absolute mess. There is no reason to majority go back to paper and pen like many countries have done and have seen the progress and have a set computer lab in the school like we all had, where kids can go to for certain times during the day to learn Word, Excel, PowerPoint, how to research, how to spot fake news, how to, learn about hacking and all that kind of stuff. They can have access to that stuff, but giving each child their own personal device, especially for the parents that have done the right thing and eliminated screens, and now all of a sudden your kid comes home with a screen from school, it's an absolute mess. And, they're looking at adult sites at school, in the school building, on school Wi-Fi. It has been an absolutely unmitigated failure what has happened overall with EdTech, and the negativity has far outweighed the positives. And when I say EdTech, I mean personal laptop. I'm not talking about smart boards. I'm not talking about communication devices for kids who are nonverbal. You always have to clear that up. Taking those things away would be pure evil. Obviously, I'm talking about individual laptops given to each individual student. Absolutely unnecessary, especially in kindergarten, elementary, and most of middle school.
Let me just push a little bit forward. Again, I mean, I'm not an expert. You are an expert, but I speak with a lot of parents, like including our classes and other parents in the school, nearby schools. The vast majority of the parents do not see it this way. I get it, they're not education, but some of them are teachers, for example, and they don't see it this way. They see it, for example, in kindergarten. In my kindergarten class, the way that after I spoke with my son's kindergarten class teacher, she told me that it's on average maybe 20 minutes a week. So we're not talking about exchanging it from a pen and paper, which is an important skill, of course. Nobody's talking about it. Or my daughter, who was in second grade, it's about 3 or 4 times a week of 15 minutes at a time with very specific dedicated that she's walking around and looking at the math, how to help with individual math, etc. And, I trust my teacher who's been doing this for many years. She's walking around with her assistant in a small class. She's able to recognize and she sees the benefits. Again, it's not, I get it. I mean, pen and paper, we've had several sessions with teachers. They all talk about the vast importance of the skills of writing, of painting, of doing things with your hands rather than just your voice. But what do you say to these parents? Because some of them will hear you and say, well, this guy has a very strong opinion. He's very extreme about what he says about the EdTech.
Okay, so number one, this teacher you're describing is definitely an outlier. So from all the stories I've heard about teachers with EdTech, the one you're describing is the one who is authoritative, follows the research, and does it right, and clearly comes to class energized enough to monitor all of these kids and their screen use. So of all the observations I've done, this teacher you're describing might be the best of the best. So this person knows what they're doing. Most of the time, it's too much. And most of the time, the teachers themselves want the computers gone. So it's far more than just limiting it here and there. Most schools, you go past the cafeteria in school, cell phones might be banned at the school. You go look in the cafeteria, the kids are just on their Chromebooks the whole time. They're not talking in the hallways anymore. They're walking with their tablets on that. It's replacing socialization time. It's replacing hallway time. It's replacing the hanging out and chatting. How many of the kids, the ADHD kids that struggle socially, are they going to step out of their comfort zone and talk to the person next to them and try to get their information and make plans for the weekend? Or are they going to play silly games on their school computer and try to find what's available to them? You got to think about what it's replacing. Jonathan Haidt in The Anxious Generation calls screens an experience killer. And that's the real danger of screens. So we get so caught up about skills. We think that all skills are gained through lectures and worksheets and monologue. We've gotten so ingrained into this lecture listen model of American education. But guess what? Executive functions don't work that way. Executive functions are developed through experiences and relationships. So the more varied experiences you have between 0 and 30, the more strength your frontal lobe has. The more interpersonal relationships you have, the more people of different backgrounds, races, and religions, and socioeconomic status, and all the different types of people you meet, that's what builds the prefrontal cortex, the relationships and experiences. And you have to think about, if they have a Chromebook at school, yeah, you might have teachers like you're describing that monitor it and watch it just for IXL and math and things like that. But how about all the other ADHD kids that are using it in every free moment instead of making friends? Then they graduate, they get their diploma. 5 years down the road, someone comes up to them and says, "How was high school for you? Like, what was your favorite high school experience?" And their favorite high school experience was hacking the computer and being able to download their favorite game, instead of going on that field trip or joining that club or joining that sport. And we never got to find out, was this kid a musician? Was he an artist? Was he an athlete? Could he have done debate club, chess club, robotics? But the school computer and the phone and the screens became the center of his life.
2 more on this topic from Q&A in the audience, and then we'll move on to another one. The first comes from Jordan. Why do you think this awareness of screens and social media harm isn't more recognized specifically in schools by educators, administrators, etc.?
Because there's far too much pressure from the higher ups to implement it into the school. Because the biggest thing now, if there's one thing American education is obsessed with, it's testing. Testing, testing, testing. State testing, federal testing. State testing, federal testing. The second that all of that testing went online on computers, we were all screwed. Everything instantly went towards that. because the scores on standardized tests reflect on the school, reflect on the leadership, and that's how we put every single school, every single student, every single class in totem pole fashion. That's exactly how American education works, is just competition between schools, competition between teachers and classes. So all of the pressure from the higher ups of we have to utilize these things because of the standardized testing scores, that's where it all comes from. It's all pressure from higher ups.
And how do you recommend responding to teachers and administrators who insist, for example, that iPad games, like gamification of skill building, for example, are to the benefit of students, specifically benefit neurodivergent students? And how do you recommend responding to parents who believe that iPads are for, they're accommodating neurodivergent or special needs children?
I would say number one, show me the research on that. Show me the actual peer-reviewed research on that. That was not funded by big tech. So I want to see the research. I want to see the funding of that. And this is another thing that drives me crazy as an ADHD specialist and someone with ADHD is this whole concept that screens are soothing, that screens are self-regulating. And oh, you give a neurodivergent person an iPad, they need that. They regulate. That is absolute nonsense. That's information from social media nonsense. There's no science behind it. Screens are dysregulating, especially to the ADHD brain that has less dopamine. So along with this neurodiversity movement, which has been overwhelmingly positive and shed light on a lot of great things, like the nonsense of social skills groups and eye contact and things like that, a lot of it came with a lot of pseudoscience as well. And some of that pseudoscience is that screens regulate the neurodivergent brain. And that is absolute nonsense. And if we're gamifying curriculums, that is not helping them be able to initiate, persist, and complete non-preferred tasks and to self-regulate and self-motivate it. Gamifying it and making it like a Nintendo game is not going to help them when they go to college when nothing's gamified, or when they go to work and nothing's gamified. All they're doing is trying to create less behaviors in school because now this is a game and they get points and it's fun and it's cool. But how about the ability to do hard things? How about the ability of believing in our kids? Kids are anti-fragile. Kids are resilient. Let's give them a little bit more credit and let's raise the bar a little bit instead of continually every single year bringing it down and acting like our kids need games to get through schools. So all of that is absolute nonsense, and there is no research, legitimate research, to back up any of those points.
Wow, several mic drops there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think about it all the time, and I think anyone who took a intro psychology course in college would be like the alarm bells start going off when you talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Like these are what's happening when we're gamifying the most basic things. What is that doing to these systems of motivation?
It is, and that's exactly it. So, what does individuals with addiction and substance abuse and ADHD have in common? It's that impulsiveness. It's that need of constant gratification. So if they're getting dopamine and gratification from those things, it's affecting them later. What are we doing to their brain? All of the main culprits. Why is it always Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft? Because those are the individuals that hired entire teams of psychologists to make those things as addicting as possible, right? And those games are all free to download. So how are they making their money? By the amount of time you actually spend playing, right? How does Apple make money? When you buy an iPhone and you keep it for 10 years, right? How does YouTube make money? It's free to download. It's all free to watch videos. How do they make money? By the amount of time you spend on the app. Attention is the currency. And it was only a matter of time until all of these big corporations, big businesses realize we're going to make the majority of our money from kids. Kids and teens are the ones that can't regulate their attention. They're the ones we're making money. And you hear all the stories, all the CEOs, all the Silicon Valley big tech people live totally screen-free lives and don't give their kids iPads and phones and video games. And they go to completely tech-free schools. Bill Gates, Mr. EdTech, went to a completely tech-free school that was outdoor-based. He was hiking every day in the woods, in nature, every single day in school. He became a tech bro by being outside all the time. not by being exposed to tech. Go ahead and read his story about his childhood and his educational journey. For everyone who likes to say, oh, they need computers, they need technology because it's the future. It's already the future. And AI is getting rid of a lot of that stuff anyway. Bill Gates became Mr. Tech, Mr. Microsoft, with minimal exposure to screens as kids. There you go.
No, listen, it's fascinating, it's scary, and it's like this issue of attention being the currency, you being the customer or the product of all these companies. I mean, it's so real, and it's not only children, it's not only children with ADHD, it's not only youth and teens. I mean, I feel it on my own flesh because I do have Facebook that sometimes I use for promoting these webinars, and sometimes before, and I mentioned this before, sometimes before I go to sleep, I'm just like, oh, let me just chill and oh, there's a reel that popped. These reels, not only they're addictive, they know what I like or they determine what I like more than what I know. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I just like a little bit. Today, I'm so happy I'm going to bed at 9:30. It's early, 10:15, and I'm still boom, 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 another one and another one. And it's awful. It's awful. And if this happens to me, a person who can concentrate and take tests, what's the chance of an ADHD 10 years old child? It's really, I agree with you. And I'll tell you, I feel lucky because I've been in the last year exposed to people from different organizations, including the Smartphone Free Childhood, which I would recommend everybody. There's a big WhatsApp group, for example, and I've learned so much from them. And I've been very careful with screens for my children, even before that, and certainly after that. Like there's almost no exposure to screens. We don't even have a TV anymore because we believe in free play outside, all of that. But here comes the question after another long introduction: is what do we do though? Meaning that I met in the AI conference just yesterday or the day before yesterday, another doc who was basically, we were talking about technology. She was telling her about her fifth grade child, boy, and she's not giving him a cell phone, but she doesn't know what to do anymore because he is the last one in the class without a smartphone. He comes, Mom, I'm the last one without a smartphone. They're all talking to each other with this. They communicate with each other. I'm out. I'm left out. My sister, Michael, is a clinical, and some of you heard this, is a clinical psychologist. She's a clinical psychologist. Her daughter, where she lives, her daughter was finishing third grade. And my sister she's focusing on anxiety and, and CBT treatment and all of that. And she was giving lectures to all the parents. But at the end of the third grade, she was the last kid. Her daughter was the last kid without a smartphone. Fourth grade starts, she gave in because the pressure was too hard. So what do you tell these parents who are growing? Because we still see in the community, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, that your child, you want to be smartphone, you don't want to give us a smartphone, but you're the last one. How do you resist this? What do you do? What is your suggestion to these parents? I'm sure that you've seen and encountered many of these situations.
Every day. Yep. So my solution is join the movement. Join it. Stop following the crowd. I'm telling you all, every single person who watches this recording is here right now. I'm going to put this very simply. The greatest gift you can give your child is not giving them a phone. Period. Life expectancy is 75, 80 years old, something like that. They can go 18 years without a smartphone. Period. Stop giving into the crowd. Stop giving into herd mentality. Every single person who says I'm not doing it, you are modeling it to everybody else. Okay? All of this ideas of if my child, because all of it is fear-based. Everything is about fear. This is what makes big tech's marketing campaign the greatest marketing campaign in the history of capitalism, because it's all fear-based. If you don't buy your child this product, they're going to lose their friends. If you don't buy your child this product, they're going to hate you, and it's going to ruin your relationship with your child. If you don't buy them this product, they won't be ready for the future. It's all fear-based, and it's working. Parents are more scared than ever before. Parents are more scared of their own kids than ever before. And if you're one of the parents who are here today who gave your kids screens too early, like I'm sure the majority of you here right now, there's lots of screens in your house, and your kid probably has a phone, and you probably regret it. So you just said, if you're the last parent, your kid doesn't have a phone, wait and give it time. because I can guarantee you over 90% of those parents who did give their kids phones regret it and wish they can go back in time and take that thing away and have their kid back. Because chances are, if that child has a phone, especially in 3rd grade, that has become the center of their life. They're probably taking it into their bedroom. They're probably talking to strangers, and they probably don't want to do any basic tasks like showering, brushing teeth, socializing, chores, joining clubs, joining activities, because the phone is now in their life. So 100% stay strong. Do not do it. And when your child gets older, they're going to thank you for it, because all of this fear of my kids are going to lose friends, my kids are going to be left out, my kids are not going to be ready for the future. It's all fear-based. My kid's going to hate me forever. And none of it is true. I have had the pleasure of working with over 500 families since 2015 that fully eliminated screens. Some of the kids even had to go to inpatient for a while because they were so addictive, and they trashed the house or they did some self-harm, whatever it may be. So they had to get inpatient because it's a real drug. When you first, if all of you here tonight, if I were to meet with you one-on-one and say to you, you need to get rid of all of the screens in your child's life, except for the basic TV. There was no youth mental health crisis when TVs were the only screen in the house, just no YouTube on the smart TV. If I were to come to you and say, you have to eliminate all screens, your face would probably turn ghost white. You would just be instantly filled with fear, ghost debilitating fear. Because think about it. Someone is asking you to remove a drug from a drug addict's life, and that's very, very scary. And there's a reason why you're scared, but we can't parent with fear. The second you make a parenting choice founded in fear, you no longer have your child's best interest in mind. You have your best interest in mind. I'm going to keep these things in my kid's life because I'm too scared of dealing with the withdrawal behaviors.
Michael, I just want to push back. It's my pushback time again.
Go for it.
And because I'm still trying to understand. I'm still looking for an answer, because in my sister's case, at 4th grade, all the kids at this point have a way to communicate with each other, which is on WhatsApp in this case. In other case, it could be Snapchat. In another case, what do you tell the child that maybe out of the 30 kids, that child or that parent of the child is the only one, and he's coming crying or she's coming crying, like all the other kids are communicating. They're communicating. This is how they communicate. I'm not saying it's good. Of course it's not good. Of course it's better that we'll throw all the cell phones into the flush it down the toilet, of course. But that's not the reality. The reality is that what happens if the parent that you're consulting, their child wants to be on the phone because he's left or she's left out. It's almost like being boycotted because you're not on the only way. They are all communicated in a virtual platform, which is like an entire different dimension. And I see these people when I bike in the morning. It's sad. I bike in the morning to the train station. I pass the kids who are waiting for the bus, the yellow bus, and I see everybody standing to the bus, and they're like this, like zombies. Nobody's talking, silence. Everybody's looking at their smartphones. Everybody has their earbuds. It's sad. Of course, I'm not justifying. It's not good. But what do you tell that micro child, that single child? How do they cope with it?
So number one, we have to remind parents is that kids like each other for who they are. Kids want to be friends. Relationships are not dependent on what apps you have and what communication tools you have and what technology you have. Kids like each other because they like each other. Your child has friends because they're a good person and people like them and they're friendly and they're kind, not because of the apps that they have. So that's the most important thing that parents have to understand. Yes, your kid wants it. He's pressuring you and it pulls at your heartstrings, and it sucks to hear your kid saying, I'm the only one, I'm the only one. But how about, based on the actual research, so the marketing says it makes kids social, smart, and safe. Let's say, for example, you walked into a store and you walked into the aisle to go buy something and you saw a bunch of products and it said, this product creates suicidal thoughts, detachment from reality, increased aggression, diminished self-worth in youth. Would you buy that product for your kid? Absolutely not. So you have to remind yourself of those things because all of those are factual based, science based. There is no science to show that screens and WhatsApp and communication devices make kids more social. It doesn't. It makes them antisocial. It makes them want to sit in their room all day long on those apps. So those parents that are allowing those kids to have it need to second guess things and educate themselves. And for the parents that really want to have those things, I coach them on how to use something called guided access on the iPhone. So guided access is something on all Apple devices. It's primarily used for nonverbal students with autism that create communication devices. So you ever see students walk around with an iPad and they push the button, say like, I want to eat, sort of thing, and they can't exit out of it. It's a dedicated communication device. They can't press the home button and start playing games and watching YouTube. It's stuck on the communication device. So all of you parents right now, if you grab your iPhone and you go into the settings app, and on top of go to the search bar on top and type it guided access, you can look up guided access, where you have the ability to lock the screen on one specific app. So you can open WhatsApp, you can open the Messages app, you can open something, and you can lock the screen on that app and password protect it. And then you can give your child the phone with WhatsApp or whatever app on it, and they're not going to be able to get out of it. They're not going to be able to get out of it and start surfing the web or start looking at YouTube. It is literally locked on WhatsApp. So I coach parents on how to use guided access if they really absolutely need it. But at the end of the day, we need more parents to follow the research, stop turning a blind eye to it. And these parents that are holding out and persevering through their kids' complaints need to be more applauded.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a quick plug for our region's first alternative device fair, which we're holding November 2nd. That's a Sunday. Mike will be joining us, which we're thrilled. So a chance to meet him in person and meet, I think we have 6 or 7 dumb phone vendors coming to talk with families. Kids can come test devices out. So this is for folks who are getting a bunch of pressure. You know, maybe you have a 3rd grader, 4th grader, 5th grader, and they're coming to you and they're saying, all my friends have phones. Like I wanna communicate. It's time. I'm being left out. There's a solution and there are safer options and there are more than ever. So please come out and join us. It's free, open to everyone, 2 p.m. on a Sunday. We will follow up with the recording information with an invitation to everyone. All are welcome. And Bark will be there. I see Emily, you have a question. What about alternative devices like Bark? Bark will be there, and I believe
Love it.
they're raffling off some dumb phones. So please come join us, and thank you for asking. Anyway, sorry for that quick plug. But I wanted to shift gears a little bit just to talk about a couple of more specific questions about the ADHD brain. A couple of people are kind of asking some more specific things. I'll try to combine a couple. But the first one is really interesting from Kina. What distinguishes a true ADHD brain between a brain that develops features and symptoms of ADHD due to screen overuse and addiction? Can you kind of talk about the difference there?
Fantastic question. So, like I said earlier, the ADHD brain is a true neurodiverse brain, and ADHD is most often hereditary. So, you are born with ADHD. Screens do not cause ADHD. Screens don't make you neurodivergent. So, that's the biggest thing to understand. Screens are not going to change your brain and cause you to be ADHD, but screens do create ADHD symptoms. They don't create brain differences. We now know the negative impacts on white matter and gray matter, the amygdala, the anterior cingulate. We know it negatively impacts the brain and dysregulates it and fries it in many ways, like that, word of the year, brain rot, right? But overall, it's not going to create it. So you need to get a very in-depth evaluation. Number one, it's very hard to get a really thorough, I don't think the science is quite there yet. That's what Dr. Russell Barkley says. So Dr. Russell Barkley says the science is not there yet on brain scan studies. The last I've heard of him, he's recently retired, like last month. The last I've heard him talk about this topic is brain scans are not there yet. They're also not readily available to the public. They're also not affordable. But then you have someone like Dr. Amen from the Amen clinics in New York, who's very big on brain scans and kind of makes them more readily available. I am not 100% sure on that. Don't take my word for it. But overall, one of the things you could do is completely detox their brain from screens, have them go 2 months from screens and see if the symptoms persist. Okay. If the symptoms do persist, then you're probably going to want to go and get that evaluation. So all these families that are spending $5,000, $6,000 on these neuropsych evaluations, it makes a lot of sense to only get those evaluations done if your child's brain is detoxed on screens. You want a true picture of your child's baseline level of skills. Have them go in there without the dysregulation of screens. That's one of the biggest things. So number one, eliminate screens first. And a lot of doctors on the West Coast are now doing this. I talked to the author of Glow Kids, the famous book Glow Kids, and he said in his practice, I don't know if it was him or somebody else, he will not evaluate a child unless there's been a documented 2 to 3 month screen detox. So if a family comes to him for an evaluation to be seen, I'm not going to even look at your kid unless they've had a 3 month full screen detox. So what you'll want to do is basically do that, see if symptoms persist, but always get an in-depth evaluation from a professional.
I got to interject 1 second. Sorry, Alex, because you reminded me that when I speak with neighbors with kids that are older than mine, often what they tell me is that the best thing that, kids who already have a lot of smartphones and nonstop social media, this and that, and then they go in the summer to the, what do you call these
Sleepaway camps.
Sleepaway camps for 8 weeks and completely disconnected. And the parents have told me personally that the kids come, not only that they're different, and of course there's confounders because who knows what they do, they have fun, but the kids themselves come and they're like, oh, now we have
I
to
hear
go back
that
to the
every
routine.
single year, not like 100, especially in this area in mainline Pennsylvania, when there's so many camps available within the East Coast, all these different areas, Camp Aquila, and all these amazing camps. Every single year, he goes to camp. He's outdoor all day doing archery, canoeing, swimming. It's literally the highlight of his life. And the camps are actually smart. They've caught on to it. If you paid attention this past summer, what were most camps marketing themselves as? Your child's only screen-free experience of their entire life. Camps were marketing themselves that way. And think of how sad that is. Your child's only screen-free experience of their lives could be this camp. That's very, very sad. So yes, you're sending kids to these camps and they're thriving for a reason. The biggest mistake is giving them screens when they get back. That's the biggest problem. Their brain's already detoxed. They should be coming home. You should be grabbing the Xbox, the PlayStation, the Switch, the iPad. Those should have been sold back to GameStop weeks before your kid got back. And you should have called Verizon, AT&T, canceled their phone plan, and have them come back from camp with no screens. That's the biggest mistake.
Okay, that's really helpful. I wanted to ask, going back to something you mentioned earlier, talking about parents who have regrets. And we have someone who submitted a question that says, is it realistic to take a smartphone away from a 15-year-old ADHD kid? So I'm curious about what you would say and what are what are the gradations? Like, what are the steps a parent might take? Because I am curious if you would recommend an all or nothing approach there, a cold turkey, or are there can we scaffold up to a solution?
Well, I'm glad you said that because, of course, number one is nothing is one size fits all. Nothing is one size fits all. I don't know who asked that question. I don't know the profile of their student. We've done a very good job of understanding that autism is a spectrum from very, very severe, need support the rest of their lives, to people you wouldn't even know have autism. And guess what? It's the exact same thing with ADHD. No two ADHD kids are the same. I don't care if they're both hyperactive, both inattentive, both combined type. Nonsense. No two ADHD kids are the same. And all of the information I've presented so far today is generalized and blanketed and not tailored towards a unique individual. Every single time I do these parenting webinars, it's impossible for the parents because parents are using their free time to attend something like this to benefit their kids who they love unconditionally. So it's impossible not to hear someone like me talk and think that I'm not talking directly to you about your child. I can assure you I'm not. I am giving very generalized, blanketed information about the majority. Do not take anything that I say today and implement it unless something is tailored towards a unique individual. every single student at Grow Now gets their own individualized plan. Nothing is one size fits all, and that's the true success of our model, is that we never use a one size fits all rigid curriculum. So the first question was, is it realistic to remove a phone from a 14, 15-year-old? Absolutely it is. We've worked with we have a young adult independence program, a failure to launch program, and we've removed young adults from we've removed phones from 30-year-olds because they're inappropriately using it. Yes, you absolutely can do it, but let's be honest, the number one thing that's most likely keeping you from doing it is parenting fear. Because when you remove that phone, you are going to have to deal with withdrawal behaviors. So the parent who asked that question, once again, I'm making a lot of assumptions because I don't know you personally, is the number one reason why. If for you to ask that question, I'm just going to assume that you asked, is it realistic to remove the phone from a 14-year-old's life? Probably because you've seen a lot of problematic use, and he's probably overusing it, and it's causing a lot of problems and a lot of dysregulation, and it's become the center of his life. So for all of these parents, here's what tends to happen. Number one, parents might sign their kid up for talk therapy and think that talking to a therapist can give them the skills, just teach them the skills to be on their phone less. So parents will sort of outsource this phone problem onto a clinician. Can you please teach my kid the skills to be on the phone less so I don't have to deal with it? I don't have to be the bad guy. I'm sorry, parents, not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. They could work with Dr. Russell Barkley himself 7 days a week, 5 hours a day. It's not going to happen. It is too addicting. And if it's available to them, they're going to use it. So you cannot outsource the screen problem. You brought it into their lives. You are the only one who can bring it out. And then parents will get too nervous about withdrawal behaviors, and they'll start to just say, like, why can't there just be a balance? Why can't they just have it sometimes? Why can't they just learn to use it sometimes? I don't want to take it away. I want them to have it a little bit. Most likely, especially if they have ADHD, this whole idea of a balance, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're going to be on it too much. They're going to sneak it. They're going to go around the house, trashing the place, searching through the garage, searching through the closets, looking through the phone to gain control of it. And when they don't have it, they're going to be screaming at you, nagging at it, dysregulating, saying, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. So the whole idea of a balance when it comes to ADHD, we have to remember ADHD is a 3 to 5 year delay. So your kid is 14 years old. He might have the brain of a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, right? So an 11-year-old should have all those apps and all that phone time and all that screen time? I don't think so. So yes, you can remove a phone from a 14-year-old. In my personal opinion, kids shouldn't get phones until they get their high school diploma, unless it's a really shut down phone, a bark phone or a gab phone or a dumb phone, those sorts of things. So yes, you can do it. You just have to ask yourself, have I not done it yet because of fear?
Amazing. You knocked out a couple of questions, but we have more flooding in. I'm going to try to combine a couple since we're running low on time. Regarding something you mentioned earlier, there is a question in the Q&A about acceptable amounts of screen time for a 14-year-old, whether all screen time is equal, or rather, is all screen time equal? Is some screen time better than other? For example, TV versus YouTube versus video games. I think earlier you mentioned basic TV is okay. Could you talk a little bit more about that in your on that or your stance?
Yeah, TV is more passive. You sit back and watch it, right? And there tends to be commercials and those kinds of things. You're sitting back and watching something. So we did not have a youth mental health crisis when TVs were the only screen in the house. We watched TV and we still went outside and we still did other things. It was not addicting. When things became connected to the internet, that's when it became a problem, right? Video games were not addictive until they became connected to the internet. Nintendo 64, GameCube, kids weren't getting addicted to those things, were they? Kids weren't getting a Nintendo 64 and stopped going outside. They were playing those things a lot, sure, but they still had other things going on. So it's the things that are connected to the internet that's a problem. So TV's okay. Try not to get YouTube on the smart TV, because then they'll just end up watching videos of other people playing video games for some reason. So they'll end up doing that. I don't know why that's entertaining, but that's what they do. So they'll end up watching that. And so TV is okay. I'm also a huge fan of family movie night. I think every family should be doing that. Take turns picking the movie and go through it every single week. I think every family should be doing that in today's day and age to build that camaraderie and have a family-based event. Those kinds of things. Obviously, cell phones that have unfettered access to the internet and very little limits on them. I've seen this thing called the Brick. I don't know if you guys know about Brick.
Yes, I'm a Brick user.
Yeah, there you go. Brick is fantastic. So if you put it's really so much about you being an authoritative parent. If you put significant limits in these things and you are very, very observant of your child's behaviors, there are too many parents out there that let their kids say unspeakable things to them, like really hurtful, horrible things to them that they would never even repeat to their friends and their peers in their parenting social circles. Like, you wouldn't believe what my son said to me the other day. And they refuse to do their homework. They refuse to do chores. They say no to everything. Their room is a mess. Their grades are horrible. They're treating you horrible. And then 5 minutes later, they're playing Fortnite. They're playing Roblox. They're playing Minecraft. That's unacceptable. That cannot happen. All behavior is communication. If they are dysregulated, acting immature, have the entire family wrapped around their finger with their dysregulation, they're telling you with their behavior, I'm not ready for screens, period. If you happen to have an ADHD child that has lots of friends, loves going outside, loves riding bikes, loves going to the playground, has no problem doing chores, these things also do happen. This is why I said in the beginning, nothing is one size fits all. I've mentioned many times tonight, ADHD kids struggle socially. But guess what? Not all of them. There's some ADHD kids that have a lot of friends and actually do very, very well socially, right? So those kids tend to enjoy, it all depends on the unique individual. The vast majority of ADHD kids, when screens are in their lives, everything else goes on the back burner. Screens are all I care about. But some of them are able to put the screens on the back burner and focus on other things. So it all depends on who your child is as a unique individual. I don't want to hear about diagnostic labels. I want to hear about who your child is as a unique person.
Extremely helpful. There are many more questions than we will have a chance to get to. I guess my final one for you is for parents who are kind of like struggling through these more individual questions or not knowing how to deal with a specific thing that's going on, whether it's tech at school or a specific device-based issue. Where can they go? What do you recommend that they do?
I recommend Delco Unplugged. Those sorts of things are great. But just overall, there are really great, you have to be very careful with Facebook parenting groups because many of them allow people to just post anonymously and write nonsense and those sorts of things. Let's be honest, social media has made all people less social. And it's a very, very toxic environment. So be very careful about information. One of the biggest reasons why parents are afraid of ADHD medication is because of all the horror stories they read on Facebook parent groups. Like, oh, I was prescribed ADHD meds, but Sarah on social media said her kid stopped sleeping, or her kid lost 10 pounds, or her kid had mood swings. So now I'm too afraid to do it. So be very careful. It's like WebMDing your sick symptoms. You got to be very careful about doing those things, right? But reach out to your local professionals. And once again, you have to be very careful about the professionals that you reach out to, because a lot of therapists out there need something called client retention to stay in business. And if you need client retention, you're not going to stir the pot and have those uncomfortable conversations of you got to get rid of these screens, because you tell parents this, they get scared, they quit the therapy, you lose a customer. So I've met too many therapists out there that are too afraid to talk about screens to parents because they know the parents are just going to leave and they lose a customer. So, I really need to reach out and empower all the therapists out there and all the counselors and all the parent coaches to be more honest and direct with parents about screens. If you're still out there saying screens are regulating to kids, you need to go look yourself in the mirror, please. And overall, we have to stop turning a blind eye to the research. The number one thing is, you touched on it earlier, is you, even being a very successful adult cardiologist, you find yourself addicted to screens and you're late at night looking through reels. So one of the big reasons why parents struggle with their kids' screen addictions is because they're addicted themselves. So they feel bad taking away their kids' screens when they're on screens all the time. But also, you can vote, they can't. You can drive, they can't. You can drink, they can't. So we have to think about that as well. You have a fully developed brain, they don't. So those kinds of things. But adults are also very, very addicted and less social because of screens. And one of the downfalls of that is we are so much less of a society now. Back in the day, you used to know your neighbors. You used to know your community. You used to know people. We used to talk. We used to feel comfortable dropping our kids off at the friend's house and going home. And we used to feel comfortable letting our kids roam the neighborhood with no adults around because we knew our neighbors. Jonathan Haidt talks about this in his book. We have underprotected kids in the virtual world and overprotected them in the real world. It has literally never been safer for kids to be by themselves outside because all of the psychopaths and evil people are on Fortnite and Roblox. So that's exactly it. So like we used to have a community. We used to be able to talk to people. Now the kids come home from school and they stay within the walls of the home for hours and hours and hours. So every little suburban home now and all the homes have these deep, dark secrets of trauma and yelling and toxicity and dysregulation and yelling and fighting and parent burnout, where parents don't have people to talk to. And parents are embarrassed to tell other people how their kid acts in the home because they go to school and they're pretty good because they respond well to the structure and the conditional relationships at school. But then they come home where there's unconditional relationships and screens, and the kid completely flips. This is where this whole idea of masking came from, when really it's just responding to the different environments. So parents need to do a better job of reaching out to other parents, building that community, enlist supporters, stop trying to parent alone. Your parenting burnout. You have to have a life outside of your kids. You need to have hobbies and interests and a work-life balance, a parenting life balance. Parents need their lives back so they can parent at their best.
I think, Michael, based on what you said, it's funny because one of the people who was watching, spoke with me a few days ago and texted me individually saying that one of the problems they think is that the parents, because of the social media, because of all the anxiety that is rising within adults as well, because of a million reasons that you described, it's ultimately leading the parents not to want or not to know how to handle kids being uncomfortable and not being able to say no to the kids. So if the cell phone is saying, give me a screen, they don't want to make them uncomfortable and cry. So that may be one of the issues. There are at least 20 more questions. I think, Michael, that we're going to need another session because this has been fascinating. We can honestly talk for another hour and a half. But the last thing that I wanted to say, and I'm going to share a screen because it's related to the data and the science. So the two next webinars that we're going to have, the first one, can you see my screen?
Yes.
I see Michael Strahan.
Yeah, so the first one is basically a study from Denmark, and we're going to invite the two Danish researchers who basically are going to talk about, I saw it in one of the cardiology journals actually, that children, who basically are on the screens more, they have less ideal cardiac health, including cholesterol, diabetes, insulin resistance, etc. And this is something that is really important, and it's a very impressive study. Simultaneously, amazingly, at the same time, pretty much a few days ago, we saw that the Denmark Prime Minister just commented, and she made a statement that they're going to ban social media for users under the age of 15, at least for now. Maybe later it's going to be, older than that. But we're going to discuss this also in that session because one of the panelists has been writing the guidelines for Denmark in terms of screens. So this is going to be next Sunday. And then the following one, early November, we're going to have an amazing guy from Pennsylvania who ran this giant study, the biggest study to date, 17,000 students that show that if you ban smartphones from children in school throughout the school session, they do better in terms of academic achievement, less depression, less anxiety. We know all of this. We're describing this. You're talking about it, but there's now strong RCT, randomized controlled trials, to verify that this is the case. So with this, there's a lot more questions. We apologize in advance to all those that we didn't get a chance to get to the questions, but we're going to host you again if you're okay with it, Michael. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I wanted to thank you, Michael, and Alex for hosting yet another powerful webinar. And thank you mostly for all the parents who stayed late to join us from Europe, from the West Coast, from the East Coast. This has been very, very interesting, and I just love these sessions. I learned so much from Michael and from others.
Yes,
So,
and thank you both so much for having me. Thank you everyone for dedicating your Monday night to be a part of this on a holiday. So thank you guys. So it was a privilege to chat with you both. I think we should do this maybe once a week.
We would definitely have enough questions to fuel it. Thank you so much. We're blessed. And everybody, like, if you have questions, like, feel free to send them to us. Feel free to reach out to PA Unplugged. If we can try to get you resources, we will do our best. Thank you so much for spending your Monday night with us, as Mike said. And
no reels before you go to sleep.
No reels. Phone in the kitchen. No screens in the bedroom.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Have a good night.